friends. Welcome to the Inspiring Heights podcast. I'm your host, Vanessa Kaiser, and I am delighted that you are here with us today. Our mission here at Inspiring Heights is to inspire you, our friends, to grow closer in your relationship with Jesus and to live inspired in your day-to-day life. We talk about all things faith, rhythmic living, and homemaking. Listen, we know you have a zillion podcasts that you could listen to, and we are honored that you chose to sit here with us today. With that, let's get right to it. Back in the beginning of March, I dropped a podcast episode called Lent and Heart Recalibration. And in that show, I talked about how Ben and I were fasting from television for Lent. And I gave a lot of specifics as to why we were doing that, and I will link that episode in the show notes if you haven't had an opportunity to listen. But now that Easter has come and we've celebrated the resurrection of Christ, our fast is over. So I thought it would be really fun to just bring Ben on the show today and have a conversation about what that journey has looked like for us, but then just more broadly, like what we learned about what happens when there's something in life that is distracting us and how we pivot from those things to live a life that is intentional and really being present and where our feet are. So I have the great pleasure of being here with my sweet husband, Ben. Honey, I feel like you've been on the show a lot this year.
Seems like it a little bit, but
maybe fine. This is going to become the Ben and Vanessa show.
Oh, boy.
So, we did not watch TV for 45 days?
Yeah, about 45 days. I think Lent's generally considered about 40.
Okay, yeah. Let's start with our why. So, when I talked in episode 29, I kind of shared, like, my why for wanting to fast from TV, but I think it would be good just to start with. Why did you want to participate in that with me?
I think it was mostly due to, was starting to feel like all I ever did was work and TV and chores.
Yeah.
And there's obviously more to life than that. And I figured TV is probably the easiest, it's the easiest cut out. It was the optional one.
Right, we can't stop doing laundry.
Yeah.
Or working.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree with you. I felt like it was like consuming a lot of time. One of the things that was so interesting is that about halfway through our time of fasting, you and I were having a conversation, and it was really good because I felt like we just got really honest about like, is this going the way you thought this was going to go? And for me, for sure, I can say there was like some moments of surprise. Like when I really started to evaluate that halfway through, one of the things that I feel like I learned that I didn't know before we started is that by the time I get home from work in a peak season, because we're in a peak season right now, we both kind of are at work, right? So by the time I get home from work at the end of the day, I'm kind of done. Like when dinner is done and the dishes are done, I don't have like a ton of energy for like 3 more projects before bedtime. So that was where it was so interesting. Before we fasted from TV, we would do dinner sometimes on the couch while we were watching TV.
Mm-hmm.
Or even if we didn't do that, then we would watch TV as soon as dinner was over. And I thought when we started fasting that I would probably get like 3 sewing projects done, and I would probably read like 12 books in the evening in 45 days. And the reality was like by the time dinner was over, I was like, all right, so bedtime. That was really surprising to me, and I thought it was just really good to like recognize that it is okay to go, hey, our evenings, like unless we're hosting something or like we have a specific activity planned, it's okay to not feel like they have to be super duper productive when you've been working since 5:15 when your feet hit the ground.
Yeah, I thought we would get a lot more like reading done or a lot more relaxation. I think what I noticed happening was not only was it a high like peak of work season, so we were both working late, but also like we were doing, I don't know, I remember a lot of cooking for other people.
Yeah.
Which took a lot more time.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time in the kitchen, which is like one of our favorite places to be together, probably.
Yeah, generally.
It's one of my favorite places. I don't know if it's yours. What do you feel like you learned? What was your biggest takeaway?
I think that as a society need to slow down. I think we were doing a lot of rushing to get to the TV. Like there was a lot of hurry up and not hurry up and wait, but like hurry up and so we can relax.
Mm-hmm. I would just echo that for one quick second and say like huge difference in the way that I think about chores, cooking, even dinner time. Like dinner is such a sweet time. And I feel like you can romanticize that, but then in the daily grind, that's for us, that was one of the things we were letting slip away, kind of. That precious dinner at the table where we were talking and because we were living distracted.
Yeah.
So there was I felt like a lot of freedom almost around like, I don't have anything to rush to besides bedtime.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
What are your thoughts on how you recognize before you're like in utter chaos or like before the shackles are so tight, something that is stealing your freedom, stealing your attention, your time, in the grind of the day-to-day life, like just super practically and realistically, how do you recognize those things?
I don't know how you recognize it before it starts to take over. Usually the first sign that I recognize that something's distracting me is like when it's starting to like I start to feel like physically feel like tired all the time, or I don't know, like emotionally drained all the time.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I talked about when I was doing the podcast, like kind of telling our listeners what we were doing, was that we really wanted to make a really strong distinguishment between TV being used for entertainment and TV being used as an escape mechanism. And I think that we live in a society that is so driven by busyness, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what you do. Like it is like the fuel that drives our society is like being on the go. And I think it's so easy to get caught up in using something that can be good, that can be entertaining, using it to escape from the craziness and chaoticness of your own life.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I think there's a lot of ways that people, like abuse entertainment and use it as escapism, whether that's TV or social media or, I don't know, probably even reading to an extent. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, like, those things are fine in moderation. Like, I mean, TV it's a medium to tell a story. Social media can be beneficial for, like, keeping in contact with friends. I think a lot of times, especially today, it's just become another advertisement stream. Books, like, engage your mind. I think that's part of it, is you have to know whether or not you're actually engaging or you're just being completely passive.
Let's zoom out like one level further and just talk about busyness. I talk about that sometimes on the show, how I don't really like that word, busyness. I think a lot of times it's a word that we use as a badge of honor. And in real life, when we get really honest with one another, I don't want to get to the end of my life and look back and go like, yes, I lived a good, busy life. Like, that's not meaningful. So let's talk about that. Like, why do you think our society is so driven and so enamored with busyness?
I think it's because we have been conditioned to think that we need to be productive, and the only way to be productive is to be busy. It's also a warping of, like, diligence and hard work.
Mm-hmm. Is there ever seasons where busyness is good?
I guess that would depend on what the busyness is. Mm-hmm. If you're just being busy for the sake of being busy or fear of missing out on something, then no. Yeah. If you actually have to get something done, like, yeah, maybe. But you also should probably look back and decide what's actually, like, a priority. Mm-hmm. Are there things you can drop?
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's, like, definitely seasons where life is fuller than other seasons. And I talked about this at the end of the podcast last week, that There's times where you go into survival mode, which we're experiencing for a little bit longer. But you can't live there forever because it isn't healthy, and it doesn't produce healthy relationships. It doesn't produce healthy rhythms.
Yeah.
It's not a good place to live forever. But there is a beauty to those seasons when you recognize them and you're learning how to prioritize and trim off some of the excess to be productive and focused during peak seasons, whatever that might look like.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I think, too, I think it's really helpful as, a married couple. I feel like this has been really helpful for us when we can be really honest with each other and do just a little check-in on our season and what we have coming up, what we should be saying yes to, what we should be saying no to. I remember the first year that we got married, and do you remember that first summer? We were gone.
Mm-hmm.
We were either gone or people were here every weekend for 8 weeks in a row.
Yeah, that was terrible.
It was terrible. And we were we are never doing that again. And then last summer we had one thing all summer, and we were home and working all summer. That was not fun either.
Well, no, we were working so much that on the weekends we were just I don't want to do anything, period. But
so I think that it's always helpful to just, I think that would be my encouragement to friends. If you feel if you're starting to feel it in your body, feel it in your heart. I think it's hard to explain, but when I was talking about TV and talking about the rushing to the next thing, there's almost this angst, which you can feel physically in your body. Your body's tense and you're physically rushing to get to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also this mental game where you're oh, I just want to do the thing. I just want to go watch Gilmore Girls. I just want to go. There's those those signs, those telltale signs that that's happening. And I think when you feel that, just being willing to pause and just ask yourself some questions where's my time going? What am I hurrying to get on to next? And then just being honest about what the answer is to those questions. I think that's another thing, is that we can go years. And I feel you can look at examples across history. You can look at examples in our own lives where you can go years ignoring something or calling it something that it isn't, right?
Mm-hmm.
We could have gone years doing this bit with television, but God really convicted our hearts, I think, and showed us that we needed to pause.
Well, yeah, you can go years, and then you wonder why you're tired all the time, or why. Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. Is rushing creates tenseness, which creates tiredness because it's physically draining, whether you want to admit it or not.
Right.
I think also things can become an addiction real quick. Before we got married, during the summer, pretty much every single night would go fishing, and I would sit at work and think about the things I need to do this or that at home. But then as soon as I got off work, I'm oh, okay, let's load up the dog and go fishing. And then I'd come home and be oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. And by that time I'd be oh, well, it's either bedtime or now I'm all hyped up because the sun or whatever. And so I'd pop down on the couch and watch TV.
Yeah. And I think there's two things there. I think things super easily can become an addiction. I also think that we can become really desensitized to the things that we really need to be prioritizing.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think, sometimes that's prioritizing physical things that need done, but sometimes it's prioritizing relationship and time to connect with people and all of those things.
Yep.
I would say that one of my biggest takeaways has come since the fast has been done, since TV is reinstated in our lives. So our fast ended we ended the fast on Easter.
Yep.
And we ended it by watching the first episode of the first season of Gilmore Girls. So that was about 45 minutes or an hour or whatever of TV.
Yeah.
And then we didn't watch TV for 4 days after that.
Right.
And that is amazing. I love it. And we did set some parameters as we reinstated TV of like, hey, we want to be television free at least 3 nights a week. And we want to really try to limit it on the weekends. Because I think that was the other thing that we took away, right? Is that we were much more engaged with like one another and resting in a different way especially on Sundays that didn't involve television.
Yeah, it used to be like most Sundays was pretty much TV from, I don't know, like 4 o'clock in the afternoon until bedtime. And then sometimes Saturdays all day, depending on like what the weather was or whatever else we had planned. I thought it was also interesting because I had a mentor tell me once that if you either want to set or break a habit, you have to do it for 40 days.
Yeah, that is really interesting. This was good. I think that thanks for fasting with me.
Yep, you're welcome.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was good.
We played, what did we play? Like 25 hands of Dutch Blitz in one weekend?
Mm-hmm. In one night.
One night. Yeah. We're Dutch Blitz champions. We're ready to take anybody on who wants to play us.
Yep.
Okay, honey. Before we go, we always ask, what's been inspiring you lately?
I mean, the weather has been a lot nicer lately, and I was starting to feel the winter blues very bad. And like last week we had, 2 days in a row that were either close to or in the 80s, and it was just great to be outside and feel the warmth of the sun.
Oh,
I was in a much better mood this week than...
Yeah. It is so crazy to me. Like, I love winter so much, and I love fall, and I love being cold, and I hate being hot. But I have felt that really, really big this year. My whole demeanor has shifted in the last 7 days. I'm like, oh, the sunshine. And honestly, some of it is just the sunshine. Like, some of it is definitely the warmth, but, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's been like 35 and sunny every morning I've thrown open the sliding glass door.
Yep.
It doesn't even have to be 70 to open the doors. All right, friends, take a second and consider what's been inspiring you this week. Friends, thank you so much for listening in today. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. If you're so inclined, we would love for you to leave a review of the show wherever you listen to podcasts. This helps potential new listeners to get a feel for the show before they even hit play. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Inspiring Heights. If you haven't already, you can sign up for our newsletter, Inspiration from the Moment, by visiting our website, inspiringheights.org, and hovering over the Contact Us link. If you have friends that aren't yet subscribers, please share the podcast with them if you think it's something that would be helpful and inspiring to them. Okay, friends, until next time, take a deep breath and be inspired where your feet are. Bye for now.